Well, hi, and welcome to another episode of my Leveraging Your Voice podcast. Today we have a special guest, a guy whose name is the same as mine, so I know he's a great guy. Paul, how do you say
We
your
rule the
last name?
world.
Yeah,
Nottoli.
Nottoli, Paul Nottoli. And
Yep.
I believe I had someone close to you on my podcast not too long ago, didn't I?
Yes, you interviewed my wife, Dr. Erin O'Connor, I think a
Uh,
few months ago, or yeah, about a couple months ago, I
yeah,
think.
not too long ago. And now I have you, Dr. Paul Natali. Did I say it right?
Yeah, that's probably more the correct way to say it with more of the Italian way to say it. But
Okay.
yeah,
So we're close. I'm not saying
it's
the wrong
good.
name at least.
No, no. I mean, I tell people if you rhyme it with a pasta, it probably would sounds right. So
I like it. All right, good. And listen, I am Paul Rakowitz with PR Vocal Coaching, and I help people, professionals really speak with confidence. And so people, we know that public speaking is one of the greatest fears that people have in life. And public speaking doesn't just mean on a stage. It does mean any audience, even an audience of one. So
mhm.
this is public speaking, making a video, just having a conversation with someone, doing a presentation at work, whatever it is, that's public speaking. And so many people fear that. And when they do, they can come and see me and I can help them. And then they can share themselves with the world with just the great love and joy of doing it. And I love doing that. So if that's you, reach out to me at prvocalcoaching.com. And today, with Dr. Paul, we're going to talk about some of his service, mission, passion, all of those things that he is really, really interested in. And we're going to help him leverage his voice today to do that. Now, I think, Paul, you have a couple of different things you want to talk about today. Let's start with the base of your life, which is your chiropractic work. Why don't
Yeah.
we start there and you talk to us a little bit about who you help and what you do?
Yeah. So the name of my practice is Vitality Shockwave Therapy. So as a chiropractor, just over the years of being in practice for 14 years, um, it evolved from regular chiropractic to more soft tissue, and then the soft tissue evolved to utilizing shockwave therapy in a form of using manual plus shockwave together to help people get better. Because what I found early in practice is there was a lot of people coming to me that had a lot of injuries that weren't resolving with other providers, a variety of different reasons for that. And I always felt that when I couldn't help them, I was doing them a disservice. And I'm that type of person. I was an athlete growing up that I always wanted to win. I always wanted to figure things out. I always wanted to be the top 1% and work hard and be the best that I could be. And so every time someone left my office or I felt like I couldn't give them the right answer or diagnosis or the right tools or skill set that I didn't have to be able to help them, um, that irked me enough that I kind of went on a mission of trying to find the right thing. And so it's kind of evolved now into helping people that are more into the chronic pain where they've seen maybe two or three other providers and or they've had a surgery and it didn't work. Um, or they're just throwing a lot of stuff at it and it got okay. It was like, yeah, about 30% better, but it's been 10 years and I just feel like it needs to be better. So that's where I've really shine, where I feel like my staff and I shine as a practitioner, finding the little details that get missed because one, people maybe not think, other providers maybe not think they're relevant or important, but also just they may be at a higher level of complexity and skill set that are needed. And we needed the tools and the assets to be able to do that. And so, yeah, it's really great to help people that are been in a lot of pain for 10 plus years. We work with a lot of people that have had back pain for 10 plus years and they've had three surgeries and four disc herniations and it's just not getting better. And when they when we even treat them like the first or second time and they stand up and they give you that look like what is this voodoo or magic kind of happening? It's a great feeling. It puts a lot of value not only to my life, but also, you're adding value and hope and healing to someone that hadn't maybe not had that in their life for a while. So it's really rewarding.
Sounds like a great service that you're providing. Talk a little bit
Mhm.
about shockwave though, because I have all kinds of crazy thoughts bouncing around in my mind, and you should ease my mind by telling us what that really means.
Yeah, so it's getting more popular with musculoskeletal conditions. It's been around since the 90s. They first started doing more
But
research with,
explain what it is. I mean, do you
yeah.
stand around a corner and shock them when they come in, or
No, so
what
it's actually a
happens?
misnomer a little bit. So it
Okay.
actually just uses sound waves. It's a high pressured sound wave. So they're actually probably a lot of research tells it say it's an acoustic wave. There's different families of this shock wave. We specifically use radial shock wave or radio acoustic wave of the type of sound wave that it is because it's more precise and a more higher
So they
dose.
don't even feel it when you do it.
Yeah, they feel it. It's a percussion. So it's because you want the sound waves to penetrate the tissue because that's what creates healing. So essentially what it does, it's when your body is without getting too technical, unless you want me to go on the
No,
science of
no,
it.
no. Leave it so that I can understand it a little
Okay.
easier.
So essentially when a body ages or a tissue is unhealthy or injured, the longer that's been there, you lay down these cells called senescent cells. But we call them, the best way to describe them, if you look up anything, zombie cells is the best way to describe them. They're old, injured, they create a lot of inflammation and problems of everything. But your body necessarily, depending on how long it's been there or how healthy you are, you don't clean them out on a regular basis especially as you get older. When you're younger, a lot more efficient. When you get older, it's harder to do, or as long if the injury's been there for a long time.
Hmm.
So what the shockwave does is that high pressure sound waves, when it's targeted specifically, essentially punches those bad cells away and out and allows your body's natural blood flow, oxygen, stem cells, healthy inflammation to infiltrate the area and start creating healing in the area. So
Now,
over time, yeah,
do they feel it as much as when you do a manual adjustment or less than that?
probably more,
More than that?
more than that.
More,
Yeah.
so when you do that, they'll feel that more than if you manually adjust them.
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
Because it can be anywhere between a minute to 5 minutes, depending on the area and how much
Also,
you're
it's
getting
not just
through.
one little
Oh
thing.
no, yeah, like a whole percussion. Depending on the area that we're working. If it's a smaller area, it's not going to be as much, but sometimes we'll work an entire back, low back, and that's obviously more surface area to cover or more specific area depending on what they have going on. Um, yeah.
Well, having a number of chiropractors on the show so far, I am amazed because they all sort of do something a little different,
Yeah.
and they all sort of specialize in a certain way. And it's kind of interesting to hear all the different ways. I myself love chiropractors because my own back was injured. And if it wasn't for chiropractors, I'd have had surgery and all that other stuff and then been unhappy with that. And it had never ended. But this way, it's much better. So
Good.
I
Good.
love the work that chiropractors do. Now, I know, now you're where at? Out in Illinois? Where are you at there?
Yeah, Aurora, Illinois, which is about 40 miles west of Chicago.
Mhm. And
Yep.
if somebody says, hey, I want to come see you because, hey, I need something like that, and I've been going to all these people and I still have the pain, the problem, whatever it is, how are they going to come see you? Where do they go? What happens?
So the easiest way, you can go to vitality-shockwavetherapy.com. There's either a form filled out or obviously a phone number to call. We have an online scheduling button, so some people have more questions if they're not sure that if it's going to help or they weren't referred to us, and they can set up a complimentary consult with me. And I spend about 15 minutes just asking them some basic questions, getting background on what's going on. And yeah, just I've been doing that enough where I know pretty much off the bat if I feel like we're going to make a significant
Hmm.
progress with them. Because the reality is there's some conditions that I'm not going to get 100% improvement on because age, injury, etc. So I need to know I'm going to make a significant improvement for them to make it worth their time, finances, effort, as well as our effort on our end, etc.
And your office, you share a building with your wife's practice too, right?
Yes, that's correct.
But if I were to come, I wouldn't have to run into the dogs and everything.
No, there's separate rooms, there's separate, the waiting room's a large waiting room, so you don't have to, you easily maneuver. We have a
People
separate
may not know
waiting,
she's an animal chiropractor.
yeah.
Yeah. So you
We have a
got,
separate waiting room too. So if you don't like dogs, we have a separate waiting room that you can hang out in before we're ready for your appointment and everything too. But most people that come in love animals, so it's usually pretty okay. But we do have people that don't necessarily like the dogs, and we have separate times where they're not here, and also, like I said, we have a separate waiting room if we
yeah.
need to. So
So whatever somebody wants, they can have.
yes, exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that sounds really good. And I asked you that, and people watching are thinking, hey, they're 10 minutes in, and this guy's already kicking them off. But that's not the case. I want to just say that that's not the case. I just wanted to get a little background from Paul on his chiropractic business. And I'm glad I did, because I didn't understand the unique nature of what you do with the shockwave. So that was kind of cool. But the real reason for that is I wanted to take us into another thing that you're doing that I think is a little bit newer. I know you haven't been doing it for 10 or 15 years. Why
Nope.
don't you tell us about this new thing that you're doing? I think it's starting up some sort of a podcast to help people. So why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so with just being a service provider and a healthcare provider for years, um, I've learned that giving hope to the client or patient, especially when they first coming in, end up being bigger. And my brother and I talked about this at one of the episodes of the podcast where he was saying we thought initially when we wanted to sound important about people thought that they want to know how much we knew and how smart we were and that we had their best interest. When in reality, they just wanted to feel heard, understand, and be able to know that there's some hope in their life. There's a limitation, obviously, as a healthcare provider or just any service provider. You only can do so much one-on-one. There's only so many hours a day, how many people you can see, et cetera. And I wanted to offer something more hope, healing, positivity into a world that seems to be more negative, that gets the loudest noise and attention, it seems like, in today's world. And so I started a podcast called the Believe the Hope podcast. And right now I do interviews with asking a variety of questions and people with different backgrounds and giving stories and things that they were in their life where they didn't have a lot of hope. They were, down. They were losing their business, or they had a family member die, or one of my last interviews, one of the ladies had 4 or 5 miscarriages, and she was struggling to have a child, and so all these things play a role because one, I feel like experiences and people can see that there's evidence of people in their same position that they can come out of it. But hope also gives people permission to step into something greater and have faith that they can be something better in their life. There is an opportunity for them. And sometimes they just need that permission or somebody or community in their ear to help them and believe in them before they believe in themselves and believe in the evidence before they believe in themselves.
Well, it's a great mission. You mentioned your brother. Are the two of you doing it together, or are you doing it on your own?
No, I just interviewed him on one of the episodes, and then we were just chatting after in between
Okay.
before recording and everything. So,
Okay. Sounds good.
yeah.
And in hey, in this world, we're not to the next world yet. In this world,
Hmm.
we all have stories of things that have happened that
Hmm.
have been difficult. So there's a never-ending storyline there
Hmm.
that you can use to help people.
Hmm.
How do you go about finding guests for your podcast? You don't just put up a sign that says, "Hey, did you have a problem? Come see me. I want to talk to you."
No, so it helps that I built a lot of relationships with one just over time, just over the years of being a practitioner, but also our coaching group, Black Diamond Cub Coaching, and some of the mentors I have, and being able to have those relationships and they get introduced, and then it just kind of snowballs from there. Um, so yeah, that's been the biggest thing is those opportunities of looking for people to help myself, whether it's coaching, mentors, but then those lead to relationships because of those things and they help you grow. They give you hope back into your life. And then they know people that you don't know and that spirals into that. So that's where I've been finding a lot of my guests that way. That's how I ran.
Well,
And then you obviously interviewed my wife and then that's how I know you. And yeah, so Yeah.
How long have you been doing a podcast? When was its debut?
The debut was, um, end of August, I believe I
Okay,
launched the first episode. So it's been a
awesome.
few months now.
Now I have to ask you this. When I did my first podcast for Leveraging Your Voice, one, I didn't have a name for it yet, so we didn't even call it anything. And two, when we started, I was talking and I had a guest on, and my son came in to the side over here, and I look over at him. He says, "Dad, the camera's like way down here. We can't even see you." So I had to fix that while we were going. So
Yeah.
that was all fun. I'm assuming you had a little better start than that.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously I did a lot of my research, and I actually used to have an old podcast that's not in existence anymore from 2014 to 2017 or 18 called Health Geeks Radio. So I had some experience, but now the technology today to make one is so much easier than it used to be. But also the landscape has changed in podcasting. It's a lot harder to garner the attention because the quality of the podcast, there's less people on, but the quality's higher. And you have mass media now doing podcasts that get, like Joe Rogan and just him be like news stations and everything. So
Okay, you ready to go for a 4-hour podcast today?
yes, let's do it. Let's talk about aliens, dragons, all kinds of stuff, all kinds of stuff.
Oh my goodness. Now, but saying that, I want you to slide us back a little bit and tell us about the thing behind you, because that's connected to your podcast, isn't it? But you
Yeah,
got
so
to
this
move
is
over so we can see
yeah, so
it.
this is my
There you go.
logo.
There you
Yep.
go. Perfect. It says believe the hope.
Yep.
And then there's something there in the middle, and you got to help somebody like me understand what that is.
So that is a phoenix. So if you're familiar with what phoenix are, it's basically rising from the ashes. It's about coming out of something. It's about, going from the ashes to something greater because the phoenix would basically die and then come up. If you're a comic book fan, Jean Grey was the phoenix and she had to die and then she came back as the phoenix. So I felt that symbolized hope because a lot of times it feels like we're in the dumpster, the ashes, the the pit, the the ditch, and sometimes always have is hope and someone that believes in us or a community that believes in us, or they hear this podcast or some other podcast that gives them that fire to just keep pushing and looking for the opportunities and relationships to help them come out of that and become that phoenix into something greater.
Doing a podcast like this obviously begs the question. So, did something happen to you that caused you to create this podcast, or something long ago and you've always wanted to do a podcast like this? What was there anything in particular that led you to say, I want to do a podcast on this subject? Believe the hope.
So the name itself, there is some stuff in my life so going back to being a healthcare provider is at the age of 4, I was diagnosed with leukemia. So I went through 3.5 years of treatment for that. I've been cancer-free since 87. So um,
Congratulations for that. And
87 or 88 or something like that. So, which has been good. So that spurred the
got to be
whole,
grateful for that.
yes,
Thankful
very
for that.
grateful.
Yeah.
And so that spawned the whole thing of wanting to be some type of healthcare provider. But I've always found that I've always wanted to help people and being in that realm. And then, like I was saying earlier, there's only so many people you can help within your walls. And I wanted to give something better to either if they can't be in my office physically interacting with me, I wanted to give them something they can listen to, regardless of where they're at in the world. And I believe the hope came up. I was thinking I had a bunch of different ideas written down, and there was a shirt. I don't know if you were at that conference where they had Black Diamond Cup had a shirt they gave out to one of the conferences that actually said "Believe the Hope" on it. And I was going through names and I was writing them down. And I was thinking about it, and I was putting some clothes away in my closet, and that shirt fell down from the closet, and I was like, okay, that's a sign because I was asking for one from the universe and praying about it. And so that's how the name started, but it encompassed everything where I think I've been through the entire 14 years as a practitioner, or just some of the trials that I've gone through with my own health to get to that point too.
So I can say that Sean and Lacey named your podcast.
To a point, yeah.
But I only say that because it's funny. I didn't have a name, and I was on a coaching call with them, and I was telling them I'm doing a podcast. I said, but I don't have a name. And they came up with a name right there for me.
There you go. They do that a lot, so they're pretty
Yeah.
good coaches and
So I was
mentors.
like, hey, I like that. I'm going to use leveraging your voice.
Yes. So it all
Like
it's
that.
funny how the both of them worked out that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like you said, they are good coaches, and it's helpful. Very helpful. So, where does somebody go to see episodes of your podcast? It's not to your chiropractic site, which you mentioned earlier. Where would they go?
So all the information and episodes are on believethehope.com, and it's streamed on all your Spotify, Apple, Amazon, whatever. It's on all those. So if you just search in those, you find it too. But if you want to get all the details and all the episodes and links of different things, that's all at believethehope.com.
I like that. So they go to believethehope.com and they can see everything there. So
Yep,
let's
and
say,
they can subscribe from there and everything too.
yep. So let's say somebody's watching this podcast because, I mean, our listenership rivals Joe Rogan. So,
Hey, that's
it's
awesome. Thank you
a
for
lot
having
of
me on.
eyes. Now, did I
Thank
have
you
the
for
right
having me
face
on.
for that statement, right? So nobody accuses me of lying. All right. So, but if somebody's watching this and they say, I have a story that Dr. Paul might be interested in, can they go to your website and connect with you and say, hey, I'd like to share my story, or how would that work?
Yeah, or you can email podcast@believethehope.com.
Hmm,
That goes to me. That's all the information that I would need to, yeah, if you're interested in being a guest. But yeah, all the information is on believethehope.com.
awesome. That's cool having a website.
The
So,
other way to get a hold of me is Dr. Paul Nottoli on Instagram. So you can send me a DM there, direct message there, and I can, yeah. So that's another way to get a hold of me
there's
as well.
so many social media
Yeah.
sites. I hope you're not going to list 17 more.
No, no. It's my Instagram you'll see all stuff that I
That's
post for about my clinic, and it has all the links to that. It has a link to
good.
the podcast and YouTube and all that other stuff there too. So
Now, starting in August, are you like weekly or?
yeah, so I do one every week. Initially, I released them a little bit more frequently, but right now I'm weekly. What I want to do too is I think the interviews are important, but I want to have more specific uh, theme messages of hope going forward into excuse me, going into next year. And so that will be going forward where it'll be more a specific topic on hope where I'm talking about something along with the interviews as well to just add more value, add more depth to it. And
There's
just
so
evolve.
many angles to come at hope from,
Yeah.
and hope's a great subject, and we can't live without hope. I myself am a person of faith in God and Jesus, so I have hope, and it is the base of all that I do. And in all the troubled times, you rely on that faith to get
Hmm.
through because there's always something better. And you always know
Hmm.
that whatever the struggle is, we can't pray for no struggles in life because we'll never learn anything.
Yep.
You don't want to really pray for struggles in life because you don't want to bring that on, but you're going to run into them.
Yep.
And you got to have the tools to deal with them.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's hard where people, I remember in certain times, I would listen to certain radio shows that would cover topics that I might have been struggling with. And it did give you hope just to hear people talking about it. You're not alone,
Hmm.
and you're not the only one. And it's really a big help. So it's a powerful podcast. In the episodes you've done so far, do you have any? I want to be careful with this question. I'm sure they all stand out. But
Hmm.
did you have anything that, is like, wow, I love telling this story or what I heard on this podcast? Anything like that that pops up as you think about that?
I think the biggest thing is there's all common themes, even though everyone's sharing their different avenues of experience. Community is always brought up in every single one of those about hope, or having someone that believes in you more than that, especially initially if it's in a really bad situation, believes in you more than you believe in yourself at the time. Um, it's hope. Most people's definition of hope is having faith in something greater or moving into something greater. There's something better for you on the other side, acting as if having the faith to take the leap and do the thing, because a lot of time that evidence is not there. Um, just for you biblically, today my spiritual coach was telling me, the story about the leopards where he was like, go and you're healed, and they're like, they have to go and then they're healed. And so sometimes hope is that way as well, where we have to take the step, and we have to have that faith to move into something without necessarily knowing what's on the other side, but just knowing that we're going to be protected and promoted in that avenue. So there's a lot of those common themes with all of them. So every episode, the more I do it, the more I realize that the podcast episodes are probably more for me than anybody else, but I know they're helping other people. But it's really fun because sometimes you're interviewing and I'm like, oh, I needed to hear that today, definitely. And almost every episode that I do an interview in, there is a message that I need to hear. And so that's been fun in and of itself, because I was not expecting that necessarily when I first
Podcast becomes a form of healing for your own self.
Yes. So there's some days where, things go wrong and you do a podcast interview, and you're like, oh, that really helped kind of get through just what was irritating me a little bit. Yeah. So it's been nice that way too.
Good. Well, now, where do you hope to take the podcast?
Well, I want it to be Joe. No, I don't need it to be Joe Rogan. I just want it to be something that's, I consistently am going to do it.
I already have Joe Rogan
Okay.
covered, so you can't be
all right.
that.
I'll be number 3. How's that sound? So it's Joe Rogan, leverage your voice, and then leave the hope. Yes, then me. Yeah, I want it to be, I want people worldwide to listen to it. I want the mission of hope to be spread as far and wide as possible. I don't necessarily have like a number or vanity metric per se, because I'm going to spread the message regardless if one person's listening to it or 100,000 people are listening to it. Over time, I do think it's going to be something that will be, the mission will grow, but just like any mission that's worth it, it's going to require work, and it's going to require effort, and it's going to require just one episode, one at a time, and one person at a time. But I enjoy the relationships I'm building because of it. I'm creating my own relationships that are adding value to my life, like I said before, and opportunities that are coming from that. And that's where I'm. So as big as I need to take it, but I don't necessarily have like a vanity metric that I'm necessarily looking for in that.
Awesome. Now,
avenue.
you were out announcing it with some folks we know. I don't know, was that in San Diego or in Vegas or something like that, Tom?
Las Vegas was the very first episode I recorded. I was talking to Sean and Lacey about it, and they're like, well, you need to come out to Vegas and record it. And so they basically held me accountable and made me record an episode talking about my mission of the Believe the Hope podcast. So Sean Lacey and Dave Meltzer out in Las Vegas, which is a really great experience.
That was your first episode.
That was my very first episode.
Excellent.
And then I got home and I was like, I got to start a podcast because I just did an episode and it's going to be released. And if I don't have a podcast where people can go, that's going to look really bad. So they basically held me accountable and lit a fire under me to start it. And then last month I went out to SoFi Stadium out in Los Angeles and recorded where I actually interviewed Dave. So they interviewed me, and then a few months later, so that was kind of a good, fun full circle where I interviewed Dave Meltzer and Sean. And we had a good conversation on hope, and it gave more perspective. And that's coming out. James is editing and all that, so I'm not sure when that is officially done because he's getting through all the other podcasts and stuff. But eventually that'll come out as well. But just I said, we joked in the beginning. I said it's like the Jeffersons. I'm moving up in the world. I went from a poker room in Vegas to now sitting outside of doing the interview. I was being interviewed in a poker room in Vegas, and then now I'm interviewing at SoFi Stadium where the Chargers and Rams play. So that was a pretty cool experience and kind of a little bit fun full circle to do
Now,
that.
you won't be doing all your episodes out there, will you?
No, from time to time, I'll go out there when they have their events or opportunities, just because I was able to interview a couple other people while I was out there outside of like the main recording. I had a little portable mic, much like yours, that I was sitting just in a little foyer that was really cool, and just did a couple episodes. But I was, again, made relationships, which are valuable in life. what you coach on of finding your voice, I find the more you do these episodes, the more people you interview, the better you get at your at speaking and just talking and communicating as well. And I know I look back at some of my first episodes to now, much like you were, the camera was down here, but how I ask questions, how I listen, how I pull things, how I interview, it's becoming I'm getting better at it because one, I'm getting more confidence, but two, it's just a skill that you have to develop, you have to build on, just like anything as well.
As you said, I coach a lot of people who come to me because they either are doing or want to do a podcast,
Hmm.
because there are a lot of things to learn to be able to be a host and do a podcast well.
Hmm.
And one of the things I would say, this is free advice to anyone. So when your guest is speaking, I see a lot of hosts are constantly giving verbal affirmations to the guest. So they're talking, they're going, yeah, right. Well, that's really hard because the guest is going to want to take some clips of them talking. And all they got is your voice in there going, yeah, right. And it really takes away from whatever the guest is saying. So one of the things I would say to people and do say to people is, okay, well, when your guest is speaking, let them speak and just listen to them. And that way they can, infuse in their message whatever it is that they need to infuse and not you getting in their way. That makes sense?
Yeah, I'm getting better at that. I catch myself in luckily my recording stuff, I can just highlight it and delete it and it goes away. So it makes it a little bit nicer with some of the technology nowadays. But that's something. And I think that's important too, because if we're listening just to listen to have a response, we're not truly listening and understanding. If we listen to actually understand and hear and be quiet, even though it's hard for me. So my hands go crazy because the crazy Italian talking as well. That's really hard in a world of a lot of noise. And that's something that I've been working on because when people feel that you're quiet and listening, they feel more understood and heard. And I feel that opens up more of it takes people's guard down too. So if you're doing an interview, it allows them to open up and you have a better, more organic or wholesome conversation with them. And you can tell in the episodes that are more, um, yeah, where they're responding and it's just kind of back and forth versus where they're having the conversation with the questions and it's just more, it comes more organic.
Active listening is a big thing that you said.
Mhm.
And with my podcast that I host, as you know, I didn't give you any questions up ahead or tell
Nope.
you anything about what we're going to do. And I mostly just make it up as we go. And my goal is just to listen. And I know that you wanted to talk about this more than anything. But I also know I wanted you to share with people what you do as a chiropractor, because that's a big part of your life. And it's a really important mission that you're on with that as well.
Yep.
So I wanted to make sure you talked about both. So that's
Yeah.
good.
And I thank you for the opportunity to be able to do so. I will, if you're interested in anything, I'm long-winded. I can have a conversation about anything I'm passionate about for a long time. Uh, yeah, even how bad the Bears are, but
They lost again yesterday, I think.
they did.
Yeah.
They're two and I don't know something in the last 3 years in the NFC North, so I don't expect them to win another game this year. But
Well, they're struggling, but we'll see what happens because they play again Thursday. So
yeah,
we'll see
against your
what happens.
Lions,
Yes, yes. Who haven't won on Thanksgiving Day in many a year?
well, they have probably about a 99% chance on this Thursday to do it.
I'm
So
not going to jinx it. It ain't going to be me.
if
So, all right.
yeah.
Hey, do you have anything else you want to share with everybody? They know how to find you for your chiropractic services. They know how to find you for your Believe the Hope podcast. And when we post this, we'll post those links for people. They know how to find you on Instagram.
Mhm.
Anything else? I like this question always towards the end. What would you leave with your audience about believing the hope?
Just that despite what we've been told in your life, that there's a lot of things that we're told that aren't true. and that there is things that we're better than, or then we take on traumas and things that we thought are reality, but they're not reality at all. And regardless of where you're at in your life, it can be better. And and there's times where it's really dark, so speaking from someone that, my family didn't necessarily, I'd see my fifth birthday, in a month from, like, diagnosed in October, my birthday's in November. They didn't know if I was going to see my fifth birthday. And so despite where you're at in your life, there is things that can get better. And it sometimes feels like there's some attacks going on you. There's somebody that's sometimes not gonna go right. But there is hope. There is people that care for you and understand for you, that will go to bat for you. And if you find those people and don't settle until you find those people, and realize that you can have a better life, and that there's hope out there, and step into faith, into something that is greater than yourself and greater than you even can fathom, and just realize that you can be promoted and protected. And yeah, God and the universe do have your back, even though sometimes it doesn't seem like it. So, and we do, like you said before, we do need those trials to mold us and shape us and make us more resilient and strong. But yeah, that's what I would just say is figure out what people told you and what's not real, and then go after something that you really want in your life.
Great message. And for folks who are watching today, go ahead and subscribe to Dr. Paul's Believe the Hope. It's Believe the Hope, right? Not believing.
Yep.
Believe the Hope.
Leave the hope.
It's at believethehope.com. Subscribe to his podcast and build your circle of hope with more and more people, so that you never forget that there is a reason to live, and to go out and try your best and do all those wonderful things, even when the time is struggling for you. So, Dr. Paul, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. I hope you've had a good time and enjoyed yourself. I got to ask, do you feel like you had a chance to leverage your voice today?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure. It was fun.
Awesome. Well, that's what we're here for. So that's good. And folks, thank you for watching. Again, if you're interested in, if you say, for instance, struggle with your speaking and you want to be able to speak with confidence in just 8 weeks, that's our little thing, go over to my website, prvocalcoaching.com, and you can click the little button up and right, discovery call button, and set up a time and we can chat. And if we can help you, we'll let you know. We'll see you in that call, but it's worth a call if you're interested. And check out all the rest of our Leveraging Your Voice podcast episodes. And thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Dr. Paul. And we will see you again next time. For now, be safe, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.